What is up, everyone? I'm Ryan from Fireside Yankees, and in today's episode, we have a very special guest from The Athletic, Chris Kirschner. Chris, how you doing today, my friend? You know, Yankees baseball's right around the corner. We have spring training not too far away. How are you doing today, and how do you feel about the Yankee season coming up?
Yeah, for sure. You know, I'm definitely looking forward to getting down to Tampa. I'll be there on Wednesday for pitchers and catchers report day. My beat partner, Brendan Cuddy, is going down on Tuesday. But yeah, we're looking forward to starting up, working together. The season itself, I'm definitely looking forward to it. You know, I started covering the team in August, so this is going to be my first full season. And just getting down to Tampa is exciting for me too. You know, my dad and I went to Tampa numerous times when I was growing up. I grew up a Yankees fan. I'm originally from the Bronx. So just now covering it as a reporter, I'm certainly looking forward to the opportunity, just because, I remember going down to Tampa when I was 9, 10, 11 years old, and now I'm doing it and getting paid to be there. So I'm certainly looking forward to it. For the season itself, you know, I think the Yankees certainly have enough talent to be one of the contenders in the American League. I think they should win the AL East. I think they're the best team in the division once again. I think it's just going to come down to whether or not they have done enough to close the gap with the Astros. As of now, I don't think they've done enough, but you know, the trade deadline is August 1st. I would be surprised if, you know, for example, Aaron Hicks is the starting left fielder on August 2nd. You know, I do think that moves will come at some point. Whether or not they come prior to the start of opening day on March 30th, I don't know. But again, I do think that when we're talking about the Yankees on August 2nd, I think they will look much different than they are right now.
Yeah, you know, that's a really interesting point about how, you know, this team, yes, you know, we have to evaluate the team as it is right now, but end of the day, you know, the deadline still definitely matters. Your team in April does not look like your team in October, and we've seen kind of the negative side of that with not having LeMahieu or not having Carpenter after you kind of feel like you can rely on him at some point during the summer. But, you know, the Yankees in left field, they do have a question mark there. It seems to kind of be the most pressing issue or the most pressing position battle because there's a lot of uncertainty going on there. You know, how aggressive are the Yankees in the outfield market right now? And kind of more importantly, I guess, who are some guys that you think can step up outside of, you know, the Hicks and Cabreras of the world to potentially get some reps in left field?
Yeah, I mean, they're still, you know, in communication with Jerks and Profar from San Diego. Right now, Profar just wants more money than the Yankees are willing to give. The Yankees are kind of right up against the Cohen tax, if you want to call it that, and they don't want to go over that. If they do clear out space, you know, perhaps they re-engage with Profar, but as of now, you know, I'm expecting either Hicks or Cabrera to be the starting left fielder come opening day. There aren't really many options outside of that unless you want to go extreme. You know, could it be Estevan Florial? Probably not, honestly. There aren't many options. If you want to go crazy, could someone like Austin Wells, you know, he's obviously listed as a catcher, but many scouts think that he's going to end up having to change positions whenever he makes it to the majors. He's a lefty bat who produces a lot of home runs, and his swing is really tailor-made for the short porch and right. You know, maybe they go crazy and say, you know, that's our guy. But as of now, I don't really expect anyone else to be in the mix for left field other than Hicks or Cabrera. And right now, I'm predicting Aaron Hicks is going to be the starter on opening day. And I know that it's not the answer that Yankees fans are probably wanting to hear. But unless the Pirates dramatically lower their ask for Brian Reynolds, and the Yankees certainly remain interested with wanting Reynolds. It's just the Pirates want, you know, the moon and the stars for Reynolds, and you know, and this is just frankly my opinion. I don't think he's on that level where, you know, the Yankees should feel comfortable giving up 2 of 3 of, you know, Volpe, Peraza, and Dominguez. It's just too much. He's a good player. I don't think he's like a Juan Soto type of player where you demolish your farm system and acquire someone like Reynolds. If it was Juan Soto who we're talking about, sure, but this is not Juan Soto. So unless the Pirates lower their ask, I don't think that's happening anytime soon. I do think it's certainly something to keep in mind when the trade deadline rolls around in August, and I think the Yankees will certainly be re-engaged with them. I don't think the Pirates are going to make the playoffs. They're likely going to be one of the worst teams again in the league, and if the Pirates decide that there's just no way forward for the two sides to agree on a long-term contract extension, which is the reason why Reynolds requested the trade in the first place, then maybe the Pirates decide, you know what, maybe someone like Everson Pereira and Clark Schmidt is a good enough package. But as of now, they that's not what they want. They want, Volpe, Peraza, and Dominguez.
Yeah, no, we've definitely talked about on this podcast, frequently, especially with kind of the dry spell with free agency kind of dwindling down pretty quickly. Just the price for Reynolds, it seems extreme, right? You mentioned he's not a Juan Soto player, so why trade a Juan Soto package? But, you mentioned Austin Wells, and I know you mentioned it's kind of like that if we go extreme here, but you did write a piece about him, and kind of how he's adamant to stay as a catcher. I've been a pretty big fan of Austin Wells, and I believe in his ability as a catcher. You also wrote about him as someone to look at in spring training. What are some of the things you think would be considered positive signs? I know he's not going to make the roster, most likely the major league team, but what are some things that you think are important for him to go through in this spring training, kind of maybe his last one as a permanent minor leaguer?
I mean, I think it's important for him when he's down in Tampa, just being around Jose Trevino and Kyle Higashioka. Those guys are two of the best defenders in the league. They're excellent framers. Trevino obviously just won the Platinum Glove Award in the American League. I just think for Austin, just being around those guys in particular is going to be extremely helpful for him. Just from talking with him and talking to people inside the organization just about his work ethic, there's no doubt in anyone's minds who I talked to when I wrote that story that he's going to just roll over and quit when if they tell him that he has to play first base or left field or whatever it might be. Like, that's just not his mindset, and he's always been that way. So I think for Austin in particular, I think one advantage that he does have is when you look at the major league roster right now in that lineup, it's really right-hand dominant. They could, and it's been an issue for the Yankees for several years now, is they're too right-hand dominant, and it's in the lineup it has had a tendency of getting exposed in the playoffs. So he is a left-handed bat. As I said before, he's someone who has produced a lot of power in the minor leagues. That's never been an issue, and his swing path is tailor-made for the short porch in right field. So if the Yankees, want a left-handed bat, there aren't many better options in their farm system than Wells. So I think he has that going for him. Whether or not he sticks at catcher, I think it kind of varies from person to person who you talk to. The Yankees are saying all the right things, and I don't think they're going to come out publicly and say, yeah, like, this guy can't catch and he stinks behind the plate and we're going to just throw him out to left field. They're not going to do that. When you talk to people outside of the organization, that's when varying opinions have. Some people don't think he has a strong enough arm to stay behind the plate, which is why they think either first base or left field is a better option for him. But, I came away very impressed with just his mindset of, I want to prove to people that I belong behind the plate. And I think when the league ends up going to an automated system or a challenge system, the defensive metrics behind the plate are going to change. We're going to change the way we evaluate catchers. Framing is obviously the biggest thing right now. If it's a fully automated system, framing goes out of the way. If it's a challenge system, framing is still important, but it's not as important as it is right now. So if the catching position gets changed in the next few years and we have different ways of evaluating these guys, Austin's ability to hit really, really well is going to be a huge positive for him, because when you look around Major League Baseball, there aren't many good hitters who are also catchers, and he's been by far one of the best hitters in minor league baseball, regardless of position. So I'm really curious to see how he's going to look. He's definitely one of the guys I'm most looking forward to seeing when I'm down in Tampa.
Yeah, I've had the hot take that I think he's going to get a postseason at bat at some point this year. I don't know the percentage. I don't think the percentage of that is as high as I'd like it to be. But definitely something. I mean, I 100% agree with you with the offensive side of the ball, and it's good to hear that he has that great mindset. It feels like a lot of guys in the Yankees system have kind of been well regarded off the field. Anthony Volpe is obviously someone who's going to generate a lot of buzz in the shortstop position. I mean, that's going to generate a ton of buzz all spring training. It looks like Peraza's probably going to win the job. I don't know if you have any opposition to that there, but it kind of feels like he's going to win the job. So third base, I think, is a lot more of an interesting battle because you have Josh Donaldson and DJ LeMahieu. Both of them are guys who are rebounding from something, whether it's, in Josh Donaldson's case, it's a really bad 2022 at the plate for his standards, or for DJ LeMahieu, it's a toe injury that, they avoided surgery on, but you kind of still feel a little uneasy about it. Kind of walk us through what you think this third base position could look like and how the Yankees are going to manage their playing time this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like left field. It's one of the positions that has at least some level of intrigue, just for the reasons you mentioned. I'm very curious to see how Donaldson's going to look this year. I think there's no sugarcoating how disappointing he was, especially at the plate. That was the reason why they traded for Donaldson. If anybody says differently, they're lying. They traded for him because they felt like he was one of the best offensive third baseman in Major League Baseball. He wasn't, and he was a disaster in the playoffs, especially. The thing that I go back to for Donaldson in particular is usually when you reach a certain age, and he's 37, a lot of the times, there's no going back. You reach a point, and he's had an awesome career, former MVP, and he's been very consistent throughout his career. Sometimes there just reaches a point in a player's career where that's it. And you look at, I was just talking to somebody today about this. You look at what happened with Tom Brady this year. Tom Brady was awesome, obviously, probably the best NFL player of all time. And then this season, he kind of looks, average and kind of below average, and it just hits. I do wonder if that's what we saw with Donaldson this past season is, it just hit, old age hit. Because when you look at his numbers really across the board, there aren't many encouraging signs that, Yankees fans should expect to bounce back. His exit velocities were down, his hard hit percentages were down. He was chasing more pitches out of the zone. He wasn't walking enough. His strikeout rates were through the roof. He wasn't hitting off-speed pitches, breaking ball pitches. Nothing would suggest that 2023 will be drastically different. Looking at it more optimistically, maybe he can lower his chase rate. Maybe he can, rise his walk rate. It was 9.9% this season. If he can get it around 12-13%, that could make a huge difference. 2021, Donaldson was hitting sliders and sinkers really, really well. He was one of the best hitters when it came to, hitting breaking pitches. This season, he was one of the worst. If he improves even just a little bit, I think it would make a big difference there. But, again, when you reach that age, it's hard to predict a bounce back. With LeMahieu, I think for him, it's really just about health. It's back-to-back years now where the Yankees haven't had him available in the postseason. 2 years ago, he wasn't available in the one-game wild card against Boston. This past season, obviously, he didn't play because of the toe injury, and it's a huge loss because you can certainly make the argument that he is the second best hitter on the team behind Aaron Judge, of course, and not having him in the lineup is a big difference. We saw that, the Yankees needed more contact hitting, and LeMahieu is one of the best in baseball at getting on base and making contact, and you didn't have that in the lineup. So maybe, and I asked Brian Cashman this a couple months ago of, could we possibly see LeMahieu's role just lower a little bit to keep him fresh for October? Maybe he becomes, instead of a 140 game player, could he become 115, 120? And Cashman said that wasn't really being considered at the time. In my opinion, I think it probably will be considered at some point, if they haven't changed their mind now, just because of the fact he is so valuable to this team. But again, I'm very curious to see what happens in the infield, because you have Rizzo, who's likely playing first base, Torres at second, Peraza, who I'm projecting at short, and either Donaldson or LeMahieu. LeMahieu's obviously the better player. Donaldson is owed $27 million, and I do wonder if that's going to play any sort of factor into whether or not he ends up playing. I don't know, but it's going to be it's going to be interesting to see how the infield shakes out.
Yeah, I think you make excellent points about kind of the availability of LeMahieu, how important that is. I mean, if you look at the kind of even that game one itself where Donaldson really struggled against Verlander, there was some really ugly swings there in pretty key situations early on where the Yankees could have pushed Verlander on the ropes, and where you kind of look at it and say, if we had LeMahieu there, maybe he puts the ball in play and perhaps the Yankees get a couple runs across and perhaps steal that game. And then you don't know how the series plays out after that. But, another key guy they missed in the postseason was Michael King, right? Michael King was arguably this team's best reliever, and then he got hurt, right? And you mentioned, that in a mailbag about a month ago that his elbow injury, it's something that, it'd be a little optimistic to assume that he'd be ready on opening day. Has anything changed on that front, or are we still erring on the side of he's probably not going to be ready for day one?
Yeah, my partner Brendan Cuddy, actually, his first article when he started with The Athletic was a deep dive on King and his injury and bouncing back. Michael believes that he could be ready for opening day. Speaking with other members of the organization, it still seems like it's a little bit optimistic that he is ready to go. The Yankees also just treat injuries very, very cautiously. Understandable. It's April baseball we're talking about, and they're not really. I mean, yes, like you obviously want to win games, but the goal is to have everybody healthy for October. So I think they're going to take it slow with King, and they already have with his offseason program. So I think I still think it's a little optimistic to expect he is 100% fully deployed by opening day. But again, if he looks great in spring training and he reports that his elbow feels 100%, the medical team feels like he's 100%, Aaron Boone feels like he can 100% trust him, then sure, he could be ready by March 30th. But, as we stand now, we're recording this February 13th, I think it's a little optimistic. But again, maybe something changes in spring training, and he looks like the King we saw in 2022 for them to change their mind.
Yeah, and I imagine that the Nestor news doesn't really help with the pitching depth in terms of, who they have available on opening day. Now, it hasn't been confirmed or anything that Nestor will miss opening day. I believe Andy Martino said that it was like they're not sure, or it's not ruled out for him to be pitching on opening week. But it's definitely going to affect that fifth starter spot, because it's a battle between Herman and Schmidt, it kind of feels like. But if Nestor misses any time, now both of them are involved in the equation here. Are there any other arms you think could potentially be stretched out to kind of compete for either to get a start or a look if Nestor were to miss time, or potentially just fill in as the five starter with Montas out?
Yeah, I mean, I think if Nestor ends up having to miss time, my understanding is it's not that extreme. But again, any sort of delay in spring training could push back his progression toward making his start for the opening week. So if he doesn't have to miss time, then that's obviously a big win for the Yankees. But if he does, like you said, I think Schmidt and Herman are the two guys for sure who are going to be in the mix, with Frankie Montas expected to miss at least 1 month of the season and potentially more. Outside of those two names, there are guys in AAA ready. Johnny Brito, Matt Blake mentioned Brito being someone that he was really intrigued with when he was at Carlos Rodon's press conference to introduce him to the Yankees. Randy Vasquez is another name to watch, but it's really, the Yankees are really focused on if Nestor has to miss time, it's going to be Schmidt and Herman in the 4 or 5 spots.
Gotcha. Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, those are the guys with major league experience. You don't want to have to dip into. I imagine Brito kind of fills more of that Sears role for last year, where he was kind of just like deployed whenever the Yankees needed him. And this isn't the pitching staff that I know. I believe it was Eno Soros who wrote the article with the injury percentiles. The Yankees' starting pitching rotation does have pretty high injury risk, so you'd rather save all your bullets like Brito and Vasquez, or potentially even Crook if they want to use him as a starter. But at the end of the day, I think that we're looking at a situation where this team has enough depth to cover their rotation. Maybe you feel a little bit differently. But my final question for you, and this isn't tailored to like the Yankees or anything specific like that. But you mentioned joining the Athletic kind of in the middle of the season, in August. I mean, that's not too far from, all the mayhem that's going on the trade deadline. The Yankees had kind of started to sputter a little bit, in July, and that carried over into August. What was the process like covering that team during a kind of a very turbulent, extreme, stretch in their year? I mean, I imagine there was a lot going on, but take us kind of through that process and how you got settled into that role.
Yeah, well, my first day they traded for Montas. I had no idea what the hell was going on. It was kind of a cluster, just because of the fact that when you when you're a reporter and you start a new job, especially in the middle of the season, no matter if you've done the job for 20 years or not, like if you take a new job in reporting, it's difficult, and it was difficult. I had never covered baseball before. I mean, baseball was my favorite sport, played it all my life, so it wasn't like I didn't have an understanding of the game. I just didn't have the relationships that you ideally want as a reporter. So it was certainly challenging, and the fact that the Yankees were really bad in August also made it difficult, just because of the fact that when the media has access to the clubhouse, a lot of the times the players were not in there, and as someone new, like trying to meet as many people as possible, it made it really challenging. And add to the fact that Aaron Judge is in pursuit of the American League home run record, so there are just way more reporters around than usual, which meant that the players did not also want to be in the same room as reporters most of the time, especially toward the end of the season, where everybody was trying to cover Judge's pursuit of 62. So it was definitely hard. I feel like in the couple of months that I had around the team, so I was there August, September, and through the playoffs, I definitely made some inroads with a few of the guys. That's why I'm really looking forward to spring training, because I've heard it's the best time to really build relationships with really everybody, players, front office people, coaches. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. But I've been with the Athletic. This is my 5th year now. I was covering the Atlanta Hawks previously. I covered the Hawks for 4 years. But I've been a professional sports reporter for 8 years now. Reporting skills transfer no matter what job you have. I could leave the Yankees beat tomorrow and go cover the Columbus Blue Jackets and figure it out on the fly. And that's what I had to do when I started in August, just because it's the middle of the season. Nobody knows me. I really had to hit the ground running. but having a full season now, I'm certainly looking forward to getting started, having a full season, making sure like all the players, the coaches, the front office people know who I am and all that. So really looking forward to it, and it's really covering the Yankees it's for me it's a dream come true. I grew up 2 miles from the stadium. My dad and I went to so many games growing up. I was 4 years old in 1996, which was really a great time to start watching baseball and playing baseball. Jeter was just starting pretty much. And then obviously the dynasty through the late 90s. So, just being around the team now, it's truly a dream come true, and an opportunity that, I can't take for granted, in a job that I really want to do the absolute best I possibly can.
Yeah, and again, I mean, it's really cool to hear that you're from the Bronx. As you mentioned, you grew up watching Yankees. You got to watch kind of the dynasty teams. That's how my dad got into the Yankees as well. It translated to me as well. But I appreciate you so much for coming on. We wish you the best of luck this year covering the Yankees. As you mentioned, spring training, great opportunity. And end of the day, it's going to be a long season. Baseball, it's 162 games. It's always a long year. But we hope the best for you, and we are more than excited to see what you have in store for us this year. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And again, guys, we're going to have links to his athletic page in the description. Make sure to check him out on Twitter. It's just at Kirschner. There's no numbers or anything, so you don't have to worry about that. And again, thank you so much for coming on. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace out.